In the sleepy town of Millfield, there was a quaint, two-story colonial house on Maple Lane that had long been the subject of local gossip. Built in the 1920s, the house was a beautiful relic of a bygone era, complete with a large front porch, intricate woodwork, and a sprawling backyard. But it had one peculiar feature, a room that no one could remember ever using. The house had been owned by the Harper family for decades. After Mr. Harper's passing in the early 2000s, his widow, Eleanor, decided to downsize and sold the property to a young couple, Laura and Dave, who were eager to start a family. They fell in love with the house's charm and potential, and soon after moving in, they began settling into their new life. While exploring the house, Laura and Dave noticed a door on the second floor that seemed out of place. It was a small, unremarkable door at the end of a narrow hallway. The odd thing was that the door had no keyhole, and it didn't seem to lead anywhere. It was simply a plain, wooden barrier with no visible means of opening it. Curious but not particularly concerned, they left it alone, thinking it was a remnant of the house's past. However, as weeks passed, strange things began to happen. Laura, who was an early riser, started hearing faint, rhythmic thumping sounds coming from behind that door in the middle of the night. The sounds were always irregular and inconsistent, as if someone or something was pacing back and forth. Dave dismissed the noises as old house quirks or perhaps the house settling, but Laura couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that the noises were deliberate. Eventually, her curiosity got the better of her. She decided to investigate further. She used a small screwdriver to pry open the door's trim, revealing that the door was actually a facade. Behind it was a wall with no handle or lock. Laura and Dave were perplexed. It seemed the door was simply a decorative element, but the noises continued. One night, Laura was alone in the house while Dave was out of town. As she lay in bed, she heard the thumping again, louder and more urgent. The sound seemed to be coming from directly behind the wall where the door had been. Determined to find the source, Laura decided to investigate the attic, hoping it might provide some clues. She climbed the narrow, creaky stairs and searched the cluttered space. Amidst old trunks and dusty furniture, she discovered a small, hidden compartment in the attic floor. Inside the compartment was a collection of old journals, photographs, and a single tarnished key. Laura brought the items downstairs and began reading the journals. They were written by a woman named Margaret Harper, the wife of the original owner, who had lived in the house in the 1920s. Margaret's entries grew increasingly frantic over time, describing a growing sense of dread and the feeling of being watched. The final journal entry spoke of a secret room hidden behind a wall, where she feared something malevolent was imprisoned. Laura and Dave decided to investigate further. They used the key from the attic compartment to unlock a small panel in the basement that they had previously overlooked. Behind it, they discovered a hidden room, barely large enough to stand in. Inside, they found old furniture and a collection of unsettling items. Tattered clothes, a broken mirror, and a diary belonging to Margaret Harper. The diary detailed a horrifying account of a trapped spirit, a woman who had been wronged and was now haunting the house, seeking release. Margaret had tried to contain the spirit in the hidden room, but it seemed her efforts only made things worse. As Laura and Dave read the diary, the temperature in the room plummeted, and the thumping noises began again, louder and more frantic. The house seemed to come alive with an eerie energy. Terrified, Laura and Dave fled the house that night, leaving the door and the hidden room undisturbed. The Harper house was eventually sold to a new family, but the unsettling occurrences continued. The thumping noises never ceased, and the house earned a reputation as a place of mystery and fear. The forgotten room remained a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within, and locals still speak of the haunted house on Maple Lane, where the echoes of the past refuse to be silenced. Months after Laura and Dave fled the Harper house, the property sat vacant, a ghostly silhouette against the backdrop of Millfield's quiet streets. Despite its reputation, the house eventually attracted a new owner, a local historian named Evelyn Carter. Evelyn had a passion for uncovering the past and was intrigued by the house's history. Driven by curiosity and a love for old architecture, she purchased the Harper house with plans to restore it to its former glory. Evelyn's first few weeks were spent sorting through the house, cataloging its history, and trying to understand the peculiarities of its layout. She found the door at the end of the hallway and the hidden room behind it fascinating. Unaware of the previous occupants' experiences, she viewed the space as an intriguing puzzle rather than a source of fear. One crisp autumn evening, Evelyn decided to start working in the hidden room. She began by clearing out the old furniture and examining the diary and other items found there. The diary's account of Margaret Harper's attempts to contain the spirit intrigued her. Evelyn wasn't superstitious, but she felt a strange chill as she read about Margaret's fear and desperation. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Evelyn contacted local historians and researchers. She learned that Margaret Harper had been an avid spiritualist, dabbling in the occult in an attempt to communicate with the dead. Her journals hinted that she might have inadvertently trapped a spirit in the house, someone who had been wronged or betrayed. One night, Evelyn conducted a séance in the hidden room, hoping to make contact with whatever was lingering there. She set up candles and an old Ouija board she had found in the attic. As she began the séance, she felt an oppressive weight in the air, and the candles flickered erratically. The Ouija board's planchette moved on its own, spelling out cryptic messages. Betrayed, trapped, free me. Evelyn's heart raced. She sensed a presence, a sorrowful energy that seemed to be pleading for help. The room grew colder, and the thumping noises that Laura and Dave had reported started again, resonating through the walls. As Evelyn continued to communicate with the spirit, she learned that the entity was indeed a woman named Elizabeth, who had been a maid in the Harper household. Elizabeth had been falsely accused of theft by Margaret Harper and had been locked in the hidden room as punishment. The injustice of her fate had condemned her spirit to linger, seeking redemption. Evelyn researched Elizabeth's story further and discovered that she had died tragically before her innocence could be proven. Determined to right the wrong, Evelyn held a public ceremony in the house, where she revealed Elizabeth's story and sought to honor her memory. She organized a small group of townsfolk to attend, hoping that acknowledging Elizabeth's suffering might help release her spirit. The ceremony was held in the hidden room, with candles and a simple memorial set up. As Evelyn read out Elizabeth's story, the oppressive atmosphere in the room began to lift. The thumping noises grew fainter, and the cold spots gradually receded. That night, Evelyn slept soundly for the first time since moving in. She felt a profound sense of peace and completion. The house seemed to breathe easier, its oppressive energy lifting as if a long-held sigh had finally been released. In the months that followed, the Harper house began to feel like a home once more. Evelyn continued her restoration efforts, and the house's reputation as a haunted place gradually faded into history. The hidden room was preserved as a historical exhibit, and the story of Elizabeth was included in the house's lore as a tale of redemption and justice. The house on Maple Lane, once a place of fear and mystery, became a symbol of healing and reconciliation. Evelyn's efforts had brought peace to both the house and the spirit trapped within, and the legacy of the Harper house became one of overcoming darkness with understanding and compassion. Months after the public ceremony honoring Elizabeth, the Harper house was embraced by the community. Evelyn Carter had successfully transformed it into a historical landmark and museum, celebrating its rich history while putting the unsettling past behind it. The story of Elizabeth and the tragic events surrounding her had become a local legend, and visitors came from near and far to see the restored house and hear its tale. However, Evelyn began to notice something peculiar. Despite the house's newfound tranquility, she experienced odd occurrences. Objects would shift slightly, and the old grandfather clock in the foyer would chime at irregular hours. More disturbingly, Evelyn occasionally heard soft whispers, as though conversations from another time were seeping through the walls. One rainy evening, as Evelyn was preparing for a special event at the house, she received an anonymous letter in the mail. The letter was written in a hurried scrawl and contained only a single sentence. Elizabeth is not at rest. The truth is incomplete. Puzzled and unsettled, Evelyn decided to investigate further. She reviewed all the materials and documents related to Elizabeth's story, hoping to uncover something she might have missed. While sifting through old newspapers and records in the local archives, Evelyn discovered a new piece of evidence. A missing persons report from the 1920s that mentioned a man named Thomas Riley. Thomas Riley was listed as a former employee of the Harper household, who had vanished around the same time Elizabeth was accused of theft. Intrigued, Evelyn dug deeper and learned that Thomas had been Elizabeth's fiancé. The missing persons report revealed that Thomas had been searching for Elizabeth after her disappearance, but there were no records of him ever being found. Evelyn's research led her to an old ledger in the town's historical society, which recorded payments made to various workers at the Harper estate. To her shock, the ledger contained a final entry for Thomas Riley, a large sum of money paid to him shortly before he disappeared. The payment was marked as settlement for services rendered, but there was no further explanation. Determined to piece together the full story, Evelyn returned to the Harper house and conducted another séance, this time focusing on the spirit of Thomas. She set up a new circle of candles and used a more advanced spirit communication tool she had acquired. As the séance progressed, Evelyn was able to make contact with Thomas. His spirit was anguished and he conveyed a tragic story. Thomas had been framed by Margaret Harper for a crime he didn't commit. When Elizabeth was wrongly accused and imprisoned, Thomas had tried to expose the truth. However, Margaret's influence and manipulations had kept him silent, and Thomas was ultimately driven to despair. Evelyn learned that the settlement recorded in the ledger was a bribe to keep Thomas quiet about the corruption and injustice he had uncovered. His spirit had been trapped in limbo, unable to move on because his story was left unfinished. With this new revelation, Evelyn organized another ceremony, this time to acknowledge Thomas's suffering and clear his name. She publicly exposed the full story of the corruption at the Harper estate, including the frame-up of Elizabeth and Thomas's own tragic fate. The ceremony was attended by historians, local officials, and descendants of those involved, marking a profound moment of reckoning for the town. As the truth came to light and Thomas's name was cleared, a significant shift occurred. The Harper house, once a place of fear and turmoil, began to truly find peace. The whispers ceased, the objects settled into their places, and the house's atmosphere transformed into one of calm and warmth. Evelyn continued to preserve the house's history, ensuring that the full story of Elizabeth and Thomas was remembered with honesty and respect. The Harper house became a symbol of justice and the enduring quest for truth, drawing visitors who were moved by its powerful story of redemption and resolution. The house on Maple Lane was no longer just a landmark, but a testament to the power of uncovering hidden truths and the importance of acknowledging every part of a story, no matter how painful. It stood as a beacon of hope and healing, reminding everyone that even the darkest secrets can be brought into the light. Don't forget to subscribe to our new channel by clicking on the link in the description.